hoping for a different outcome today.
You can criticize your government. You can protest. You can vote your elected officials out of office. However, what you cannot do is plan or commit acts of violence. Violence is never the answer.
The two men charged with plotting to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer found guilty on all counts today.
Yeah, this comes after 2 weeks of testimony at the federal courthouse in downtown Grand Rapids. That is where we find our Michael Martin. He has covered this case since the men were arrested all the way back in October of 2020.
So, Michael, we have to assume that this isn't the end of this saga. What's next for these men involved?
Josh, Max, not quite the end yet at this point. It was just 8 hours. That's how long it took this new jury to convict Adam Fox and Barry Croft on all counts. This took much less time than we saw in the first trial, that jury deliberating for just over 4 days. Now these two men will be soon sentenced, and they're looking at the possibility of spending the rest of their lives behind bars.
The verdict confirms that this plot was very serious, very dangerous.
After 2 trials, the government on Tuesday secured the convictions of these two men, Adam Fox and Barry Croft, who they charged with conspiracy to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
No governor, no public official should have to contend with what Governor Whitmer contended with here. All of our elected officials, everyone, deserves to be able to live in safety.
After their co-defendants, Brandon Caserta and Daniel Harris, were acquitted on all charges in the first trial earlier this year, U.S. Attorney for West Michigan at the time, Andrew Burge, vowed to prosecute again.
You can criticize your government. You can protest. You can vote your elected officials out of office. However, what you cannot do is plan or commit acts of violence.
After just 8 hours of deliberations, this jury found Fox and Croft guilty of conspiracy to kidnap, possession of a weapon of mass destruction, and for Croft, on an additional charge of possession of a destructive device.
The defendants in this case believe that their anti-government views justified violence.
While these charges carry the possibility of life behind bars, their defense attorneys say this is not the end of their fight.
Well, the federal courts do provide for appellate relief, but generally that's something that happens after a judgment has been entered, and we will be pursuing all avenues of relief for our clients in between now and sentencing.
They argued in both trials that their clients never agreed to any such conspiracy, saying the government's use of undercover FBI agents and multiple undercover informants went beyond what is acceptable in an investigation.
I do not think that we did go too hard. I think that the record speaks for itself. I'm sorry that things happened with the jury that didn't allow them to conclude the way we wanted them to.
Saying undercover informants like Big Dan Chappell and Steve Robeson were the only ones orchestrating any sort of plot.
I mean, this isn't the outcome we wanted, right? But there's more work to be done, and so that's what we're focused on.
So in terms of how much time Adam Fox and Barry Croft could end up doing behind bars, well, the charges of conspiracy to kidnap and possession of a weapon of mass destruction, they carry potential sentences of life in prison, while that other charge, possession of a destructive device that just Croft is facing, was convicted on, that carries the possibility of an additional 10 years. For now, and live in downtown Grand Rapids, Michael Martin, Fox 17 News.
And Michael, it's interesting that there's such a 180-degree shift between the first trial and this trial. It makes me wonder how close, if at all, that first jury was to convicting these two men. And not knowing the specifics in there, what did you see that was different between these two trials?
Well, Josh, it certainly was different. I mean, not to mention how much shorter this trial was. I mean, what goes into that is less witnesses on both sides of the aisle. The government had a lot of witnesses the first time around that were technical, that they were talking, you know, this is how we collected this evidence, this is the process we use. Very technical jargon and, frankly, boring stuff. We don't know how much of that the jury in the first trial tuned out. But coming to this second trial, They got rid of a lot of that foundational stuff and stuck to the big players in terms of witnesses. So a lot fewer witnesses on both sides of the aisle, and particularly on the defense's side of things. After the government rested their case, we heard from the defense they only went for about a day and a half in terms of introducing witnesses and proofs in regards to evidence, putting that on the record for the jury. Now, of course, the burden of proof lies with the government. Perhaps their thoughts were they didn't present a case strong enough to convict our clients. But this is what we have now. And when you're talking about the possibility that that first jury was close to similar verdicts, we just don't know, because Judge Robert Yonker, who oversaw this case, actually put a lock on the information regarding jurors in that first case until sometime in October. So those names are not on file for public access in the federal court yet at this point. So there's been little, really no discussion with those jurors in terms of what happened behind closed doors. Same sort of lock is on this jury until February of 2023. So in terms of what was going on behind those closed doors in that deliberation room, it'll likely be some time before we hear that. But I'll send it back to you for now, Josh.
All right. Yeah, Michael, thank you. 2 weeks for this trial, 5 weeks for the first one, different time period, different outcomes. So at least one person is happy, though. That would be Governor Gretchen Whitmer. It's actually her birthday today as well. She responded to the verdict with this, saying, "I ran for office because I love my fellow Michiganders and my home state with all my heart. I always will. I will not let extremists get in the way of the work we do. They will never break my unwavering faith in the goodness and the decency of our people." She went on to say, "I will stay focused on getting things done for the people of Michigan."
And you can stay with Fox 17 as we follow up on sentencing and other trial coverage on air, online, and on our streaming platforms. You can also scan the QR code on your screen to check out previous coverage of the case.